Hello everybody, I am finally doing a follow-up to my Genshin Pokemon episode. This is a series where I take Genshin characters and I give them a typical 6 Pokemon team based off of the type that I think they would be. Basically, I turn all of the Genshin characters into Pokemon gym leaders. My goal with this series is to do one Genshin character for every Pokemon type. I think there's 18 types, so that's a lot of videos. So if you haven't watched the last episode, I'd recommend you go watch that. Then watch this one, and if there's any Pokemon types that I still haven't covered, let me know which Genshin character you would assign to them down in the comments. For now, let's get straight into it. The first character I wanted to do was Dehya, because I love Dehya, and I really wanted to do a fighting type Pokemon gym leader, and I think Dehya is the best option. I know some people might say Ridley or Hazo, and honestly, yeah, those are also perfectly good options, but spoiler alert, Ridley is actually in this video, so you'll have to stick around to see exactly what he is. The first Pokemon that I assigned for Dehya is Pawmot. I thought it would be really cute to give a lot of these characters a little like companion Pokemon that would sort of run around with them and be their sort of Pikachu. So I thought Pawmot was great. He's got big ol' hands, who's good for a fighting type. I should also mention I gave Dehya the fighting type because of her burst, where she punches, the hell out of enemies. And I think Pawmot is a Pokemon who, obviously he's fighting type, but also he's got those big ol' arms that are good for punching. And he's cute, and I feel like Dehya is like one of those characters that's a mix of ferocious and sweet. So she would appreciate having some real scary looking Mons and some real cute looking Mons on her team. Considering I gave Dehya the fighting type because of her punching, there's one Pokemon that has to be on her team, even though I really, really dislike it, and that is, of course, Hitmonchan. Again, not a huge fan of this Pokemon. I find all of the ones that are slightly humanoid, and especially the ones wearing clothes, really freaky, but this one is like the canonical punching Pokemon, so it has to be on her team. There is another slightly punching and fighting coded Pokemon, and that is Hawlucha, who I also gave her, because honestly I just really like Hawlucha. I think he's real fun, and he's like super intense and cool, and I think he just matches Dehya's vibe a lot. Another Pokemon that I think really matches Dehya and her whole shtick is Infernape. There's very few Pokemon gym leaders in the series who do have starters on their team, but there are a couple, so I think it's fair game. And I think Infernape is just a perfect representation of Dehya. I was really considering making this her ace Pokemon, but I kind of had a better idea later on. The second to last Mon is Phalanx. This one might be a little weird. I know that this Pokemon isn't like hugely up Dehya's alley, but it has the same color scheme as her. It is of course fighting type. It's got the little armors on it, and I just think it's cute and it needs more recognition. Maybe you could say that this one represents like the Eremites or the Core of 30 or something, where it's a bunch of little guys that make up a big group, So sure, we'll go with that. Finally, for her ace, this is the last Pokemon on her team usually, and it's usually the most powerful. I chose Paldean Tauros. This one might be a little weird, but I just think it really fits her. It's black and red, like her color scheme. Dehya's design is based off of a Manticore, and there's no Manticore in the game. This is pretty much the closest, I think. Before anyone says it, I know that Pyroar is like the perfect Pokemon for Dehya, but again, I'm trying to make her fighting type instead of fire type, because we did fire type in the last episode. We gave it to Diluc. So yeah, that is Dehya's entire team. I wanted a team that was both ferocious, but also a little fun and cute, just like Dehya. And I wanted a team that all was focused on that sort of physical fighting. Again, like I said last episode, I mainly base these choices off of aesthetics. I'm not hugely into the Pokemon meta. I do know my way around the games, but I mainly focused on creating a team that I think is thematically fun and interesting for the characters. So yeah, that's it for Dehya. I hope you enjoyed her team. The next character we're going to create a team for is Itto. When I asked y'all last episode what characters you wanted to see in another episode of this series, Itto came up a lot. Some people said he should be fighting type, and a couple people said he should be bug type, and I love that idea, especially because I don't know if there would be many other characters in Genshin who would be good for a bug type, but I love the idea of Itto, who is this big guy, he's obsessed with being like the strongest and the coolest guy around, has the Pokemon type that is generally considered to be the weakest. I think it's really fitting for his character and it's really fun, and I'm actually a really big fan of the bug type. I think there's a lot of really good mons in there, so let's get straight into it. For his companion mon, his little friend that follows him around, I chose Karrablast. Yes, Karrablast is an unevolved form, but I think it is the closest to an Onikabuto that there is in the game, and its little fangs, its little screamy face, I think it just matches Itto so perfectly, and I can totally imagine this like hanging out on his shoulder and screaming at people while Itto's are going around like Inazuma City or whatever. I think this is the perfect choice personally. Then I was focused on picking some more mons that were just close to Onikabuto as I could find in the Pokedex. So one of them was Ariados. Not super similar, but there is a lot of bug poison types in the Pokedex, so I knew I wanted to pick at least one of them, and this one was the closest to an Onikabuto, so I chose it. I also chose Galvantula because I love Galvantula. It's one of my favorite bug types, and I just think it's perfect for Itto too. This one's a bit weird. I did choose a Paradox form, or whatever they are called from Scarlet and Violet, but I chose Slitherwing. I believe last episode I said I wasn't going to choose Paradox forms because I didn't like the idea of gym leaders using them, but I just think Slitherwing is really cool and really good. And again, it's got that general sort of buggy Onikabuto sort of shape, so I thought that it would work in this instance. I also chose Yanmega. Mainly I just chose this one because it is my favorite bug type, I think. This was the Pokemon that I carried around on my Soul Silver team for way too long because I was emotionally attached to it, but it's really not very good. At least mine wasn't. But I really wanted to use it because I think it's super cool. And finally, for Itto's ace, anybody should have seen this coming. If he is a, bug type, a lot of people thought he was fighting type. He uses Onikabuto, which are those beetles with the big horns on the front. His ace is obviously Heracross. I mean, come on. It's bug fighting, it's the exact kind of beetle that the Onikabuto are based off of, I think, and it's just a big friend. Like, this is totally Itto's ace. I will accept no other answers. It's literally the perfect choice. Perfect. So yeah, that is Itto's team, a bunch of little bug friends. Some of them are a little bit more fearsome, like Yanmega and Heracross and Slitherwing. Some of them are a little on the cuter side because, again, Itto's got that duality where he tries to come off really like gruff and scary, but he's actually kind of just like a funny guy, basically. So that's why I chose this team. As always, for any of these characters, let me know if you have better choices and explain them down in the comments. I am totally willing to concede to some of y'all's better ideas. The next character we are going to do is Mona. This was another idea that I got from the comments of the last episode, Mona being a psychic type gym leader. I think that's perfect. Just like Itto last time, there is an obvious answer in my head for who her ace Pokemon should be, so go ahead and see if you can guess it before we get to it. But for now, we'll talk about the rest of the 5 mons on our team. First and foremost, one that I chose is Claydol. I mainly picked this one because in its Pokedex, it talks about how it is like a really, really old artifact of a civilization that's long past that has like psychic qualities to it. And I thought about how part of Mona's characterization is that she spends way, way, way too much money on fortune-telling materials. And I was like, oh, what if she spent way, way, way too much money on this like priceless artifact, thinking it was going to help her with her fortune telling. That was kind of the idea. The companion mon that I chose for Mona was Espeon. Again, I think this one's perfect. Espeon is obviously the psychic Eevee type. I think she would like Espeon at least, and I could totally see Espeon hanging out in Mona's fortune-telling lab / house, whatever you call it. It also has kind of the same color schemes as Mona, with like the pinky purples and the red and the blue ears and stuff, so I thought this was a great choice. I chose this typing because I think its Pokedex entry is really fitting, and I just really like this Pokemon. It is Rabska. This is one of my favorite Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet, and I was really happy to see that it fits Mona really well, so I definitely wanted to include it. Another slightly weirder one that I chose is Musharna. Musharna is like a dream eater. Its psychic powers comes from people's dreams, and I thought maybe Mona could utilize that somehow in her, fortune telling. I don't know, dude. I know that in the game she reads stars, that's how she does like fortune telling stuff, but there's not a lot of like star reading-esque Pokemon. There is one that I included just as a reference to that though, which is Starmie, because it is a star. Yes, it is technically a sea star, not a star in space, but I was like, this is close. It's a psychic type. It has a star shape. This can be the sort of reference to Mona's, stargazing, fortune-telling technique. Finally, we have Mona's ace Pokemon. If you know anything about Pokemon, you probably saw this coming. This was a really obvious choice. Mona's obviously psychic type. She's a witch. She's got a big hat. Obviously, her ace Pokemon is going to be Hatterene. Hatterene is like everything that Mona is. She's a witch. She's got a big hat. She's a psychic type. She's got, some curves to her body. She's also got that big piece of hair in the back that's kind of like Mona's pigtails. I was like, yeah, perfect. This one is so good. I don't know in this series if I have picked a better ace Pokemon for someone than I have Hatterene for Mona. But once again, let me know if you have any better choices for her down in the comments. For now though, we will be moving on to our fourth character, which is Ridley. I mentioned him before. He is not a fighting type, he is in fact a steel type. Some of y'all said in the last episode that Shanyun should have been a steel type, and I can respect that. But originally when I was thinking of the entire Genshin cast and trying to think of like who would be a steel type, who is most likely to have like an affiliation with steel. Obviously so many characters use like swords and spears and stuff, but is there any character that specifically has to do with metal and steel? And I thought that Ridley's giant metal gauntlets were pretty much as close as it was going to get. With that in mind, we'll talk about his Pokemon now. His sort of companion Mon, his little friend Mon that I chose was Excadrill. I chose this one because Excadrill has the big metal hands, just like Ridley does when he's using his gauntlets. And honestly, I just think Excadrill is fun and funny, and I think he's a great choice. He's also got the like scar pattern on his stomach, and Ridley's got the scars on his neck. I was like, yeah, this is fitting. This is good. The next Pokemon I chose for him is a bit of a weird choice, but it is Forretress. And I chose it because it reminds me of Ridley's signature weapon. That little thing with a camera that floats around next to him. It also is called Forretress, and Ridley of course lives in the Fortress of Meripede. So I was like, yeah, perfect. Once again, Ridley, there was a debate, should he be fighting, should he be steel? So I had to include Lucario. A lot of people last episode said that Lucario should have been a shoo-in for Sinnoh. I agree. If I wasn't going with typings and I was just going based off of aesthetics, Lucario totally would have been Sinnoh's ace. But instead, Lucario finds himself on Ridley's team. Another one I chose for Ridley is Metagross. I don't really have a particular reason for this. You could argue its big legs look like the machines in Meripede that we used during the Archon quest, or you could just argue that it is a big, powerful steel-type Pokemon, and that is why I chose it. And you would be exactly right if that's what you argued. Second to last is Scizor. I chose this one because it also looks like it has big, gauntlets or big gloves or whatever. I know that this does mean that there's two steel bug types on Ridley's team, which is not great, but it balances out because he's got Lucario and Metagross, who are both very good Pokemon, so it's fine. Plus Scizor, I just think it's really good for Ridley, the big gauntleted hands that it punches people with. I know technically it is like scissors, it cuts people with the claws, but that's neither here nor there. As for Ridley's ace Pokemon, I mainly just chose a steel type that I thought was ferocious enough, that was intimidating enough, that it could be Ridley's ace. Ridley is a character that comes off as very serious and very intimidating when you first meet him, so I wanted a Pokemon that felt like it could represent that. And so I chose Aggron. I really like Aggron, I think it's cool. It definitely doesn't have huge thematic connections with Ridley, but I just wanted to go for something that really felt like Ridley's ace. Something that it was like, if Ridley was actually a gym leader and he pulled out an Aggron, I'd be like, oh yeah, makes total sense. And that rounds out all of Ridley's Steel team. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But that will be it for him, and we're going to move on to the last character we'll be doing in this video, who is Kokomi. In the last video, you guys were very enthusiastic about Kokomi being a fairy type, and I totally agree. She is perfect material for the fairy type gym leader in Genshin Impact. For her first Pokemon, I am going to come straight out of the gate and say one thing. I broke my rule. Kokomi has one Pokemon that is not a fairy type, because I simply had to give her Blissey. Blissey is obviously like the healer Pokemon of the game, and she's pink, just like Kokomi. She's got the little frills, just like Kokomi. I had to, and honestly, before I made this video, I genuinely thought Blissey was a fairy type. I did not realize that she was normal. So yeah, I broke my one rule for these videos, but you'll have to excuse me. I had to give Kokomi the pink, cute healer Pokemon because it's just so fitting. It wouldn't have felt right if Kokomi didn't have Blissey on her team. If you disagree, once again, just let me know which Pokemon you would replace Blissey with. Another Pokemon that I gave to Kokomi, this one is probably also a shoo-in, a lot of you probably also thought of this, is Azumarill. Fairy, water, extremely cute, blue and pink, and white. This one's so obvious to me, it's the first one I thought of for Kokomi when I was making these images. Kokomi is, however, not just a priestess, not just a healer, she is also a general of an army. So I wanted a Pokemon that was tough and that looked like it could fight. There's not a huge amount of those in the fairy type roster, but there is a brand new one who I thought was really good. That is, of course, Tinkaton. I had Tinkaton on my Scarlet and Violet team. She's not my favorite Pokemon in the world. I think she's really funny, even if she still to me doesn't really look like a Pokemon, but I do think she is iconic, and she's perfect. She's like a cute little thing, but she's got this giant hammer. That's like Kokomi. She's very cute, she's very pretty, but she also is a great strategy, military person. So boom, perfect. Another Pokemon I chose was Megiarna. I honestly don't really know why I chose Megiarna. I think she's like a pseudo-legendary or a mythical Pokemon or something like that. I think it was just like the vibes were kind of there. So we're just gonna move past this one. If y'all have a better idea, let me know. Second to last is Gardevoir, a resident fairy type lady Pokemon who floats. I was like, Kokomi is, you know, in this instance, a fairy type lady, and she also floats during her normal attack sequence. I will give her Gardevoir. I was also thinking of giving Gardevoir to Mona earlier, because someone's got to have Gardevoir. It's one of the most iconic Pokemon of all time, even if it's for the wrong reasons. But I ended up giving her to Kokomi purely because of the floating thing. I was like, this works thematically, I guess. But here we are for the Ace, Kokomi's best Pokemon. This is another one where it's like, if you know anything about Pokemon, you probably guessed this one. Kokomi is very often called the mermaid of Genshin Impact, so there is a perfect Pokemon, in my opinion, to add to her team as her ace, and that is Primarina. Yes, this is another fairy water type Pokemon, but Primarina is so perfect. She is a mermaid, she's got the same color scheme as Kokomi, and she's great. Honestly, I love Primarina. I think the Popplio line gets a lot of hate, but I think it's better than the Litten line. I said what I said. But with Primarina, that wraps up Kokomi's fairy team plus Blissey, and that also wraps up all of the characters that we will be looking at in this video. We had dehya with her awesome, cool, and cute fighting team. We had Itto with his silly, charming bug team. We had Mona with her elegant and esoteric psychic team. We had Ridley with his intimidating, strong-looking steel team. And then finally, Kokomi with her both cute and powerful fairy type team. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. It has been a long time in the making. I believe the last Pokemon video was 4 or 5 months ago at this point, and I have gotten a lot of comments saying that you want another one. So here we are. I hope that it lived up to your expectations. Which means that we have now covered 12 out of the 18 Pokemon types. So I think that there should only be 6 Pokemon types left, which I'll probably cover in a part 3 of this video. Please let me know which characters you would assign to those final 6 Pokemon types. And once I make that video, if you guys want to see more Genshin Pokemon videos, I could always do more where I give the entire Genshin roster Pokemon teams and types. There will obviously be repeats of typings at that point, and probably Pokemon as well. But if you guys want to see more, I am so up for doing those. These videos are a ton of fun. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Please leave a like and a comment if you did, and potentially subscribe to catch more Genshin videos and a ton of other variety content. But I will be leaving it at that for now. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Later!